Some stars know when to leave the stage. They bow out gracefully, let the legacy speak for itself, and walk away while the applause is still ringing. And then there are the others, the ones who keep going long past the point where going on still makes sense. If the music of your generation still matters to you, consider subscribing so you never miss a video like this one. Number 12. Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. For decades, the Rolling Stones were the most dangerous band in the world. Raw, restless, and relentless, they defined rock and roll rebellion across generations. But watching Mick Jagger dart across a stadium stage well into his 80s raises a question most fans are reluctant to ask. The energy is still there, technically. The spectacle remains enormous, but the voice has thinned. The spontaneity has been replaced by choreography, and what once felt like chaos now feels like a very expensive tribute to itself. Consider that the Stones launched their Hackney Diamonds tour in 2023 at the ages of 79 and 80, grossing over $100 million while performing to stadiums of 60,000 people per night. The production budget alone dwarfs what most artists earn in a lifetime. And yet, reviewers from outlets like Rolling Stone and The Guardian noted that songs like Gimme Shelter, once a genuinely menacing piece of music, now arrive with all the danger of a theme park ride. Keith Richards, whose entire mythology rested on unpredictability, plays his parts note for note, night after night, with the reliability of a session musician executing a chart. The Stones have earned every ovation they ever received. That is precisely why the current chapter feels like one chapter too many. Number 11. Paul McCartney. Few artists in history have accumulated the kind of goodwill Paul McCartney carries. A Beatle, a legend, a songwriter whose catalog genuinely changed the world. And yet his recent tours have drawn a complicated response from even his most devoted fans. The voice that once soared through songs like Yesterday and Let It Be Now strains visibly on those same notes. Concerts stretch past 3 hours, which sounds impressive until you consider that a significant portion of that time is spent apologizing for what the voice can no longer do. His Got Back tour of 2022 and 2023 saw him performing at Glastonbury at the age of 80, making him the oldest solo headliner in that festival's history. The crowd of approximately 200,000 people was enormous and enthusiastic, but critics pointed out that McCartney spent stretches of the set speaking to the audience, sharing anecdotes about John Lennon and running video tributes, which functioned as elegant but transparent strategies for giving the voice necessary recovery time between demanding numbers. Paul McCartney deserves to be remembered at his peak. Every year he continues makes that harder. Number 10. Ozzy Osbourne.
After all, there's only just the two of us.
Ozzy Osbourne has been defying predictions of his own death for roughly 50 years. That is, in its own strange way, admirable. But the farewell tour that never quite ended, combined with a series of serious health struggles that left him visibly diminished, turned what should have been a triumphant final chapter into something closer to a public reckoning. Audiences who came to celebrate the Prince of Darkness sometimes left with a different emotion entirely. His No More Tours 2 run, which began in 2018, was postponed multiple times due to a severe fall in 2019 that aggravated a spine injury from a 2003 quad bike accident, followed by a Parkinson's disease diagnosis he revealed publicly in January 2020. The cumulative weight of those disclosures, each one arriving before the tour could be completed, shifted the narrative from celebration to concern in ways that no production budget could correct. He announced his retirement from touring after his health made live performance impossible. Some felt that announcement came years too late. The music still holds. The spectacle, in its final years, did not. Now, before we continue, drop a comment and let us know where you are watching from. It is always great to hear from viewers all over the world. Number 9. Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart in his prime was one of the finest rock vocalists who ever lived. That raspy, weathered instrument was unique, emotional, and instantly recognizable. In recent years, however, Rod has leaned heavily into nostalgia tours and the occasional Great American Songbook collection, and the gap between what that voice once was and what it delivers today has become impossible to ignore. His Great American Songbook series, which began in 2002, produced 5 consecutive #1 albums in the United Kingdom, a remarkable commercial achievement that demonstrated his enduring audience. But the vocal performances on those later records leaned increasingly on studio correction and careful production choices that live performance cannot replicate. He still performs, he still sells tickets, fans still show up in their thousands. But many of those fans leave quietly acknowledging that what they witnessed was a fond memory being performed, not a living piece of music being created. There is a difference, and Rod Stewart once knew exactly what that difference felt like. Number 8. Cher. Cher has been announcing farewell tours for so long that the word farewell has essentially lost all meaning in her vicinity. Her most recent goodbye stretched across multiple years and multiple continents, with extensions, additions, and amendments that turned a send-off into a second career. The voice remains surprisingly durable for someone of her age. The spectacle is still Cher, which means it is still enormous. Her Here We Go Again tour, which launched in 2018, was originally scheduled to run for 100 dates and ultimately expanded to over 300 shows across North America, Europe, and Australia, grossing over $600 million and becoming one of the highest-earning tours ever mounted by a solo female artist. By any financial measure, it was a triumph. By the measure of what a farewell is supposed to mean, it was a contradiction performed at stadium scale. But the credibility of the farewell has evaporated entirely. When every goodbye comes with an asterisk, the audience eventually stops believing the story. Cher the icon is irreplaceable. Cher the permanent farewell is something else altogether. Number 7. Elton John. Elton John did everything right when he announced his farewell Yellow Brick Road tour. He gave it a name, he gave it a timeline, he gave it genuine emotional weight. And then, the tour ran for 5 years across hundreds of dates in dozens of countries, becoming one of the longest and most lucrative farewell tours in concert history. Specifically, it launched in September 2018 in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and concluded in July 2023 in Stockholm, Sweden, spanning 330 consecutive shows and grossing over $900 million, making it the highest-grossing concert tour ever recorded at the time of its completion. By the time the final night actually arrived, audiences had largely lost track of whether this was still a farewell or simply a very long career. To his credit, Elton John eventually did stop. The fact that it took 5 years to complete a farewell is a detail that will follow the legacy with a wry footnote.
See, I've forgotten if they're green or the blue.
Number 6. Aerosmith. Aerosmith spent the better part of 2 decades threatening to break up and then not breaking up, which is a tradition among classic rock bands that has become almost as reliable as the music itself. Steven Tyler's voice, once one of the most elastic and expressive in all of hard rock, has faced serious challenges in recent years. A farewell tour was announced, then paused due to Tyler's vocal cord issues, then rescheduled, then complicated further. The Peace Out farewell tour began in September 2023, but was halted after just 2 shows when Tyler suffered a vocal cord injury that doctors determined required surgery and a minimum recovery period of several months. The band subsequently announced in early 2024 that the tour would not resume, and that guitarist Joe Perry's own serious health issues made a return to the road impossible. The band members are not young men, the road is not kind, and the fans who remember Dream On from the early 1970s deserve to carry that memory intact, rather than watching it slowly revised by concerts that cannot quite reach the same heights. Now, let us hear from you. Which of these artists do you think still has something genuinely new to offer? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
Close to you, feeling your heart beating.
Number 5. Kiss.
You keep on shouting, you keep on shouting.
Kiss built their entire identity on spectacle. The makeup, the platforms, the fire, the blood, the explosions. It was theater as much as music, and for decades it worked magnificently. But the end of the road farewell tour, which launched in 2018, exposed something the costumes could no longer hide. The original lineup was fractured. The performances, by the band's own enormous historical standards, were uneven. And the decision to eventually introduce avatar versions of the band members to continue performing without the original musicians was one that divided fans sharply. family. Paul Stanley's voice, which had already drawn criticism during the tour's earlier legs, became a focal point for reviewers in 2023 and 2024, with several prominent music journalists describing his upper register as effectively gone. The band's final show took place in Madison Square Garden on December 2, 2023, and within weeks they had announced a partnership with a company called Pop House to develop digital avatar likenesses that would tour indefinitely. When a band replaces its own members with digital recreations to avoid stopping, the farewell has become something harder to categorize. Number 4. Lionel Richie.
'Cause I wonder where you are, and I wonder what you do.
Lionel Richie is enormously charming. His catalog is genuinely beloved. All Night Long, Hello, Say You Say Me, these are songs woven into the fabric of American pop memory. But Richie's recent live performances have increasingly leaned on backing tracks, audience sing-alongs, and the sheer goodwill that his name generates, rather than on the kind of vocal delivery that made those songs matter in the first place. His appearances at Glastonbury in 2022 and at the coronation concert for King Charles III in May 2023, broadcast to a global television audience estimated at 15 million viewers, placed his current vocal limitations on unusually public display. During the coronation concert, portions of his set relied so heavily on the crowd carrying the melody that several commentators noted, not unkindly, that the audience had essentially become the performer. He performs at festivals, where the average audience member was not born when his biggest hits were released. That is a testament to his crossover appeal. It is also a sign that what is being sold is nostalgia rather than artistry, and Lionel Richie deserves a legacy built on more than that. Number 3. Ringo Starr. Ringo Starr's all-star band has been touring in some configuration since the late 1980s, which makes it one of the longest-running revolving-door touring projects in rock history. Ringo himself has remained warm, generous with fans, and genuinely enthusiastic about performing. But the performances themselves have settled into a comfortable, predictable groove that feels more like a classic rock cruise ship experience than a concert event. The all-star band's rotating roster has included artists like Joe Walsh, Steve Lukather, and Edgar Winter, and the set list has remained almost entirely unchanged across multiple decades of touring, with Photograph, It Don't Come Easy, and Yellow Submarine appearing at virtually every show since 1989. He is a Beatle. That fact alone will fill venues for as long as he chooses to walk onto a stage. But filling venues and delivering a performance that honors the depth of that history are two different things, and the gap between them has quietly widened. Number 2. Diana Ross. Diana Ross remains one of the great icons of American popular music. Her voice carried Motown through its defining years. Her presence is still undeniable when she walks onto a stage, but recent tours and television appearances have drawn concerned reactions from fans who remember what that voice was capable of at its height. Her 2022 Diamond Diana World Tour, mounted to celebrate her 78th birthday, received reviews that were polite in tone but pointed in their observations, with several noting that the microphone levels were mixed unusually high and that certain songs had been quietly transposed down from their original keys to accommodate a range that no longer extends where it once did so effortlessly. The control is less certain now. The range has narrowed, and there is a particular kind of sadness that comes from watching a legend navigate a performance that would have been effortless decades earlier. Diana Ross gave so much to American music. The most generous thing her team could offer her at this point might simply be permission to stop. Number 1. Tony Bennett. Tony Bennett's final years offer perhaps the most poignant story in this entire conversation. Diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, Bennett continued performing with the support of his family and his longtime friend Lady Gaga, and he did so with a grace and dignity that moved audiences deeply. His final concert, by most accounts, was a genuine farewell in the truest sense. He passed away in 2023 at the age of 96. What his story reminds us is that the question of when to step away is not always a simple one. Sometimes the stage is the last place where something essential still lives. Tony Bennett found music even when other things were slipping away, and in that sense, his continuing was not a failure of judgment. It was a love story, and that is a beautiful note on which to end.